and then I find myself in trouble with my colleagues. So thanks for letting me do that. Also too is there's the some links there for the sessions, both with the QR, and we will also get the link into the chat for everyone. And then we will go from there. So if you believe even now that you're supposed to be at the 2 o'clock session with the Unmanned Safety Institute, you have definitely arrived in the right spot. So your 2004 is starting off very well. You've come to listen to USI, the Unmanned Safe Institute, and we have Scott Lyston with us, and he's going to tell us about something I could not fill a shot glass about. So I'm really looking forward to this session.
So thanks, Scott. We'll go ahead and turn the screen over to you, and we will let you get started, and we'll let you tell about yourself. You can probably do it much more eloquently than we can.
I'll certainly try. So let's see here. I'm gonna hopefully not embarrass myself. I know you're all looking at me going, man, he's so young. He's probably super tech savvy, but let's make sure that I can do this right. All right. So can you see my presentation?
Yes, looks great.
Okay. All right. Now this is the tricky part. So from the beginning, let's see what happens.
Oh, nope. We see your emails.
Still?
Now we see emails. We did see your presentation. There it is.
Well, bear with me. Let me try that again. Because I had to do it twice earlier today as well.
There it is. Yay.
All right. I don't know what it is about having to do it twice, but so again, Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Scott Liston is my name. I'm very, very happy to be with you all today. This has been an incredibly well organized and just really well put together event. So thank you, Terrell and Jody and everybody involved in this and letting me be a part of it. I'm going to talk today about drones in transportation. So in case you were expecting something different, that's what we're going to cover. So the agenda, we're going to do a little introduction about me and the company, go into some drone industry data and information. Then I'm going to get really into the important stuff, which is the industry credentials, which are so important in the CTE world and for helping your students get jobs. The teacher certification side, which is really where we in Ohio are really looking to become leaders right now. Is the only way to have a successful drone program is to start by having a successful instructor, for it. And then how do we maximize value in the classroom with a drone program? So those are the topics that we're going to cover. A little bit about me. So again, Scott Liston is my name. I'm a local guy. So and I'm not sure if we've just got Ohioans on the call with us, if we've got any neighboring states, especially the team up or the folks up north who I'm a little angry at still. Sorry for saying this, but I'm really looking at this whole drone opportunity as a way for our state, the state of Ohio, to take national leadership here, and the state is doing a lot of great stuff, and we're going to talk about that later in my presentation. But I make no bones about it. I want Ohio to be the epicenter of all things unmanned aviation, kind of what I would refer to as next generation of aviation. And I think we're off to a really good start. That picture of that really attractive kind of chubby bald guy there, that is me. And I'm standing in front of, that was my vacation on Mars, I guess, but I'm standing in front of a picture of Mars. And the reason I put that up there is I love that image. I'm kind of a space geek. But we've been flying, our country have been flying drones on Mars since April of 2021. And we've got 70 successful flights under our belt. And again, that aircraft is what is referred to as remotely piloted. It just happens to be from another planet. But basically, it's the same thing we're doing in the drone world today. And nobody ever thought it would last for as many missions as it has. And it is continuing strong and doing great. I am an aviation person. I came out of Ohio State's aviation program in 1984, thought I wanted to be a commercial pilot for a living. And ended up going a different route, kind of the back office route, as opposed to the front office of the airplane. I was part of the founding management team at a company here in Columbus called NetJets. NetJets is the largest private aviation operation in the world. Over 700 aircraft around, based around the world. Most of those in the U.S. It's a Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett company, and I spent 16 years there at the beginning of my career, from the mid '80s to 2000. And what I've done since then is I'm that serial entrepreneur. I have built, grown, sold 4 businesses over the years. And in 2016, we actually acquired, I was with a company that acquired USI, or the Unmanned Safety Institute, because we really saw the handwriting on the wall and how significant that the whole drone space was going to be. So I've had the opportunity of working with USI since 2016 and on a full-time basis since 2019. And pretty exciting stuff going on here. So just a little bit more about us, because I really want you to understand kind of the perspective that we bring to the table. And then I'm going to talk a lot more about drones and how this starts working in a classroom and workforce development scenario. So the way we describe ourselves is that USI is a company that is a best practices organization within the drone space. So when somebody wants to do it correctly, they do it, in conjunction with what's known as best practices. So we employ those best practices. We basically have created a lot of original content around, what are best practices, what are the standards of best practice operations in the drone space. And we have rolled that out throughout the United States. And in fact, very proud, we're getting ready to put out a press release that the program that we have, our education training certification program, is being launched in Thailand with a partner called Drone Video here in 2024. So we've got a lot of neat stuff going on outside the country as well. There's 2 basically business units, or what we call verticals, within USI. The academic one is our biggest, and that is basically where we have what we refer to as a turnkey academic offering that includes, the curriculum, the content, the workbooks, the textbooks, all the materials for the students, all the materials for the instructor certification training, everything you would need to go from zero to having a industry leading best practices type academic drone program. And we're going to talk a lot more about that. On the commercial side, and this is really why USI is so different and so unique in the industry, is because we do exist significantly on both sides of the equation. On the commercial side, we have companies, large and small, but many Fortune 500 companies who are standing up or scaling up their drone operations. They come to us and say, hey, we need help. We need to create a standardized program, standardized operations, standardized operating procedure, standardized training. They're looking for that standardization at a best practices level, so that they could really scale their program. Because drones, unlike traditional aircraft where they are, millions of dollars, to acquire aircraft, drones are not. So, like as an example, we're working with a utility company based here in the Midwest that basically woke up one day and said, hey, oh my gosh, we're operating 250 drones throughout our operation, throughout our 11-state operation. And they were doing so without a standardized process or procedure. So they brought us in, and that becomes our job, is to help get them standardized at a best practices level. Because if you do that, then you can maximize the return on that investment of drones for your company. So we are a well-known and respected, I guess, company on both the academic and commercial side. And again, that's what really makes us unique in the marketplace. This slide, I'm going to go through just very quickly, because it doesn't really matter. What you've got here is a lot of logos, a lot of different companies and organizations and so on. This is my way of telling you that we're not one of those companies that sits on the sidelines and lets everybody do all the heavy lifting, but rather, the drone industry, the commercial drone industry, is a whopping 7 years old. Commercial drone regulations came to life in 2016, and And so in terms of the age of the industry, it's still very, very young, and there's a lot of work to do. There's integration into the nation's airspace. There's tracking. There's, again, safety of operations. There's all kinds of stuff. And we are actively engaged in all kinds of different initiatives that are supporting this process, including sitting on committees with the FAA to help them bring this to life. So certainly not sitting on the sidelines by any means. Okay, so let's not forget, enough about USI, enough about me. Let's talk about the drone industry, data, and applications. So first, I got to start with kind of what I would consider to be almost an embarrassing slide. Embarrassing, from the perspective of being on the aviation side of the equation here, is that one of the biggest problems that the drone industry is having is what I would call an identity crisis. Here's what I'm talking about: is unmanned aviation is one of many terms that is used to describe drones. So let's talk about that. So what is unmanned aviation? It's the operation of an unmanned aerial system, or UAS, for a variety of purposes around the world. So now we gotta look at a definition with another phrase that requires to define what is an unmanned aerial system. So a UAS is defined as any aircraft that is operated remotely. No one on board the aircraft, and that could be both within visual line of sight or beyond visual line of sight. So I don't like the term unmanned for a lot of different reasons, but one of them is that it basically implies that the human component is not involved. They're not in the loop. And that couldn't be further from the truth. So as you hear about autonomous and unmanned and all this kind of stuff, please understand that the human component is very much needed, necessary, built in, and I can assure you the FAA is not going to allow the human component to completely disappear here and just let the technology take over everything. So at the bottom of the slide, you'll see that I've got some aviation is filled with acronyms, just like your world is. Aviation is no different. So throughout our presentation, our discussion today, remember this: that when I say drones, that equals UAS. If I say UAS, that equals UAV. If I say UAV, that equals RPAS, which is remotely piloted aircraft system. All of those words and phrases and acronyms mean the same thing. So real quickly on the pictures, when people think of drones, I think today, for the most part, they probably think of that picture in the upper left there, which is the small drone. That one is known as a quadcopter. It has 4 propellers on it. And those are the common ones. You'll see them at Best Buy, you'll see them at Walmart, you'll see them flying at the beach, and that is very common. And that certainly is part of the discussion we're having today. But the aircraft just to the right of it, you look at that and you say, well, that looks a lot more like an airplane. Well, it is. That just happens to be an airplane that doesn't have a pilot on board. It is being remotely piloted. This one is doing pipeline inspection. And it's electric powered. It looks like an aircraft that's flying horizontally. That particular aircraft does not have the ability to land and take off vertically. So it's actually launched from a slingshot, type of situation. In the lower left, that octopus-looking flying thing is something that everybody on this call is going to be hearing and seeing a lot more about in the very, very near future, because that's basically an aircraft that weighs, let's say the airplane there weighs about, I'm going to guess 18 pounds. And it probably has the ability to lift almost its own weight, so probably around 15 pounds. So those kind of aircraft are going to be seen and used in what's referred to as drone delivery. And that is an industry that's at very, very early stages. And in 2023 was the fastest growing segment of the commercial drone industry in the United States. And there are some huge announcements coming out in the early 24 related to some major companies, pharmaceutical companies. Walmart, Kroger is getting doing drone deliveries, and we'll talk more about that later. And then to the lower right, I wanted to just put this in because even though it's not something that we would refer to as a drone, it is the same technology. That particular aircraft is a 8-propeller aircraft, battery powered, so it's electric, and that one is actually designed to fly people or cargo. But in this configuration in the picture, it's people, and we're going to talk a lot more about that because that's where this particular niche of the industry is going, and it's going to be going that direction a lot faster than anybody thinks. So our friends at the FAA, and again, I am a 40-year aviation person. I've been in the industry for 40 years. I graduated from my state in 1984. This is 2024. So this is my 40th year of being in the aviation industry. I have a lot of respect for the FAA. Sometimes they get a bum rap, they get made fun of, and you know, they are a large bureaucratic government agency. I mean, that's a fact, but they've done some great work over the years. They push out a forecast every 2 years. And that forecast is designed to look at the aviation industry in totality. And basically what they do this because their job is they've got to manage this stuff, ground operations, air operations, security operations. Their job is to manage all this stuff. So they have to have their fingers on the pulse of the industry in terms of how is it growing. They push out this forecast every 2 years. This is the 2023 forecast that we're looking at here, just a snippet from it. And here's one thing I think is kind of interesting. So 4 forecasts ago, which roughly would have been, let's just say 7 years put out, the unmanned aircraft page, the drone section of the entire report, and this entire report is 100 plus pages, was 1 page. It was 1 page. The 2023 version that came out, the drone section was 34 pages long. It was the largest of anything. And I'm talking about, commercial airlines, business aviation, helicopters, cargo, all that kind of stuff. The largest was this one. So please rest assured that the FAA is very much in the mix relative to what's going on in the drone world. And so what this chart does is it basically is forecasting the need for the number of commercial pilots. And as you'll see in 2024, you just go up, it says the need is at 363,000. And in 3 years, in 2027, that number is going to eclipse 400,000 commercial drone pilots. Now, I want to take a quick pause here and say that doesn't necessarily mean that there will be 402,000 people employed somewhere in the United States that all they do for a living is fly drones. In fact, in a lot of cases, like some of the customers we're working with in the utility sector, they actually cross-train their linemen, the folks in the field, their operations people in the field, so that instead of using this tool or that tool or a ladder or so on, they can go to the truck and they can pull out the drone. So that would be a cross-train version, but many of these jobs also will be standalone drone pilots. So how does this compare to like the manned aviation side of the industry? And so the chart on the left of my screen here right now is the number of aircraft. And this would be all the ones that we're familiar with, the manned aviation side, so piloted aircraft in the United States from 1990 to 2022. And I know those numbers are small, I apologize. So I'm just going to read them to you. So the top of every one of those bars is landing somewhere in between 200,000 and the next line up is 250,000. So you'll see that it stayed in that area, for the entire 22 period or 32-year period that it was covered here. And at the very right, the most current year, 2022, the number is roughly, let's call it 220 or 225,000 aircraft, traditional aircraft registered in the United States of America. Well, now let's look at the right. First off, I can tell you that commercial drones have only had to be registered since 2016. So again, this is very, very new. And in fact, every drone that's going to be flown outdoors must be registered. There's well over 1 million drones registered with the FAA, but 350,000 drones since 2016 have been registered as a commercial drone. So that means their intent is to use it in the process of making money or helping their business develop commerce. It is being used in a commercial application. So I think those numbers are pretty staggering, and we're getting ready, and I'll explain more about this later, to take another huge leap in terms of registered drones. And again, I'll talk more about that in just a second. So our drone jobs in demand. So instead of listening to me, so one of the things we did in putting this presentation together is I actually had an older presentation just a few years ago. I think I did it, that I went to ZipRecruiter, the same website, typed in the same information, And at that time, the average salary for a drone operator was $65,000. And you'll see now that the national average is $130,000, almost $131,000. But that's misleading. So I want to tell you that right now. A drone pilot who's making $131,000 a year is flying large aircraft in very, very complex operations. And most of those folks are probably doing it in an offshore type of situation. They exist. We know those people. Those jobs are out there. But the majority of the jobs that we're talking about today are going to be to the left of that number. And that number starts at 49.5. And you'll see it, it really doesn't show the increments that it jumps in, but it is very realistic today that drone jobs are out there in the marketplace across the United States at anywhere from about $50,000 to about $70,000. That's the kind of job that you could find in the marketplace, especially for what we would consider to be Part 107 consistent operations, which is basically the regulations that the FAA has in place right now, which are non-complex operations. But here's the slide that gets me so excited. Again, I'm a 62-year-old, 40-year aviation guy that's been hanging around the industry for a long time, and some people probably think should be retired by now. But I'm telling you, what we as consumers, what we as aviation people are going to see from the aerospace industry in the next 10 years is going to trump what I've seen in the last 40 years. And I've seen some cool stuff. The aviation industry has not been stagnant by any means. I've seen some cool stuff. But what's happening right now in the aerospace industry with not just drones and autonomous aircraft but the electrification of going on, and whether that's through battery or hydrogen fuel cell, it's going to be one or both of those. It likely is going to be, at a large scale, both of those things. The other changes in safety and avionics equipment on board the aircraft and so on. It's amazing what's happening right now in our aerospace industry. And if you, not me, if you all, or I guess I could put us in there, if us as educators, if we as educators introduce the next generation, the high school students today, the grade school students, today, if we can introduce them to this next generation, this next evolution of the aerospace industry through the first person perspective of being a drone pilot. First off, we're giving them something really cool, really exciting, fun, interesting, heads up, not heads down. So just introducing them as a drone pilot is I think really, really great by itself. But here's where it gets cool: is the drone pilot in the larger drone ecosystem is just the tip of the iceberg. We may introduce a student to become a drone pilot, and they'll fly and they'll enjoy it and they'll have fun. They'll say, wait a minute, I can design. I like to design or engineer a new aircraft. I think I can do a better job. And if you look at what a drone looks like versus what a traditional aircraft looks like, you'll see that people are starting every day with blank pieces of paper to say, okay, what does a drone look like? And the answer is it can look like just about anything. So engineering and design, it could be the manufacturing side. Drones are largely driven by software. That's where the autonomous stuff comes from. It's all software on the drone, in the controller, in the all the technology associated with operating the drones is all software driven. But then what is a drone doing? I'd like to tell you the drones are just go, hey, let's go fun. Let's go fly. They're fun. Well, that's not why drones exist. Drones are carrying some sort of a system known as a payload. And that payload is largely some sort of a sensor, some sort of a camera. And that camera is capturing data. Maybe it's video, maybe it's pictures, maybe it's thermal, it could be all kinds of different data, but that's what a drone does for a living. Well, somebody's got to take that data, analyze that data, and turn that data into meaningful information so companies can make better and more informed decisions from that data. My point here is that drone piloting as an introduction to this technology is just a great way of exposing them to everything that is related to this technology, and they're bound to find something in there that they love, and they want to pursue. And here's a little bit different view of kind of the same concept. A drone is a part of the aerospace industry. And so bringing drones into the classroom, what are you doing? You're introducing these students to the aerospace industry, which, as I mentioned before, is undergoing the biggest evolution since the jet engine in the 1940s. You know, what's going to happen in the next decade is going to be amazing. So that alone is like saying, okay, we are opening enormous doors for you above and beyond drones, but inside the aerospace industry. Well, but you're also opening the door to the larger autonomous industry. Autonomous aircraft, aka drones, are not limited, or that technology is not limited to aircraft. There are submersibles, there are land-based, there are on top of the water, you know, boat-based. The autonomous technology that powers a enormous shipping vessel, like we see in the right picture there, and the autonomous technology that basically powers and drives a 5-pound drone is 80% the same. So again, introducing them to the little dinky, you know, $100 drone is introducing them to the larger autonomous industry, but it doesn't stop there. All of these things is just an introduction into the larger robotics industry. And I developed this slide. I'll tell you why, because all the schools, I've talked to a ton of schools over the last few years, and I love doing that. And I love it when the teachers get really real with me. They're like, Scott, at the end of the day, I got to get these students excited, and I got to get their parents excited. And I always tell them, I say, use this slide. Use this slide, right? Use these two slides right here. This one and the one I had before, the tip of the iceberg slide. Use those slides and get them to understand that a drone is not a toy. You know, this is not another heads down, you know, cell phone application thing that they're working on. This is something much, much larger than that. And everything you see on this page right here is the kind of stuff that maybe not everybody, but will be of interest to a large portion, you know, of today's students, because it just checks all the right boxes, you know. So let's start talking about drones and the use of drones. So if you look at drones relative to all of the, you know, government recognized industry sectors out there, and we could play a game. You could throw an industry sector at me, and I'll tell you the use of drones, because here's what I can tell you is that drones are in use by every industry sector that the U.S. government recognizes today. It's growing in every one of these spaces, some more than others, you know, but they are in use. And so what you've got on what you see on my screen right here is just a sampling. But infrastructure is huge. Again, all the power lines, the cell phone towers, the bridges and dams and all that kind of stuff, infrastructure inspection. If you think about how it, quote unquote, used to be done and how it's done now, well, guess what? Drones are out there with these ridiculously powerful cameras capturing data, and they're bringing that data back, and they're doing it better. They're doing it faster. They're doing it more efficiently with less risk and less cost. So think about what I just said for a second. If you were working at a company that maybe you're in an infrastructure inspection company, so, well, we're used to driving the truck out there and pulling the ladder out and climbing the ladder. And well, okay, we'll get into the 21st century and think about somebody coming in and say, well, hey, boss, this year I want to employ drones to do this. Well, think about the return on investment that you can get by better, faster, cheaper. Well, that's why drones are making such an impact in the commercial marketplace today, even though drones are being ridiculously restricted by the Part 107 regulations that exist today. And we'll talk more about that in a second. So I know this afternoon session is specifically on transportation. So we're going to talk more about that. But I just wanted you to see that it's being used, you know, significantly in all kinds of different applications. So transportation, you know, everybody, I guess, has access to this presentation. I think you can download it. And so the way we built this is these are links that I've got on my page, on this particular page. So I'm not going to jump out and go to them right now, but I would ask you to maybe take a look at them later if you're interested. But, you know, transportation, logistics, kind of all the same thing. How are drones going to be used? Well, first and foremost, drones are going to be used to move cargo and people. And it's just that's just it's not a conversation of if. It's not even a conversation of when. It's just it's a conversation of scale. How much of this is it going to do and when? Because right now there are, drones, autonomous aircraft are already moving cargo in huge quantities. And really a lot of this stuff started in remote areas using medicines and emergency supplies and things like that. But again, we're at the point where 2024 is going to be the year where and again, maybe not where everybody lives. It's going to roll out in sectors. It's going to roll out, largely in rural areas first, and so on. And the more things get urban, the tighter the restrictions become. But that is going to happen in a huge way. So when you think of transportation, you think of transporting goods and people. So I want to emphasize that the use of autonomous aircraft in the transport of goods and people is probably ultimately going to be the biggest use of drones in transportation. Again, at the bottom of the screen, delivery, food, packages, medical, emergency, first responder. Well, already we're seeing that in large urban areas, New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, places like that, the fire and police have implemented drones as first responder. And they could, why? Well, because if something happens out there, because of the congestion in those cities, it takes them a while to get out there, to get eyeballs on the scene. But literally, they can launch a drone in 30 seconds. They can get it to the site. And as the humans are working their way there, a drone beat them to the punch by 5, 10, 15 minutes, has eyeballs, has digital eyeballs on the scene, and is basically sending back video saying, okay, this is what you're getting into. This is the equipment that you need. This is the amount of people that you need. So we're already seeing that as part of the transportation side. Infrastructure inspection for aircraft, trains, highways, bridges, all that is transportation. In the transportation umbrella, all that is happening, as we speak in Ohio. Again, my friends up north in Michigan, we just our company won a grant, to help the Michigan Department of Transportation perform bridge inspections using drones as opposed to the way they've been doing historically with ladders and bucket equipment, and all that kind of stuff. And so all that stuff, that's not drawing board stuff. That's stuff that's happening as we speak right now. But also, again, transportation logistics, drones are being used inside these monster warehouses you're seeing primarily for inventory. These things have the ability to fly a pattern around the warehouse where they're collecting data and they're reporting inventory on a real-time basis as to what's still going on. And you can imagine how much faster it can do that than a human being doing it with their clipboard and all that kind of fun stuff. Anti-piracy in the shipping industry, that's a big thing. I've been watching the news just over the weekend, but they're over in the Middle East again, there's a shipping channel that is being the piracy is going crazy there right now. And so drones are in use, first off spotting them, and then in fighting that kind of stuff. And really, and I don't mean this in a bad way to the helicopter industry. Helicopters are great, but to a large degree, what a helicopter can do, a drone can do better, cheaper, faster, quieter. Not everything, and probably, and I don't know if it'll ever be anything. Maybe it could be. You never say never, but certainly, I think if I was the helicopter industry, I would be kind of looking into the future with a very sharp eye relative to, hey, how are helicopters going to be replaced with drones? Because again, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. So now let's get a little bit more specific about how do you get people ready for a job or a career in the drone industry? Well, first off, let me say that the FAA has exactly one commercial certification for the entire drone industry, and it's known as the Part 107. So if you want to become a commercial drone pilot in the US, you take your 107. Well, the 107 is a knowledge test. There is no requirement that you demonstrate to anybody that you actually know how to fly a drone, but you go cram for a test, you take the test, you pass the test, and you can go out and you can start operating drones, commercially. And the reality is that's just kind of silly. But that is the FAA requirement right now. So you'll see on my screen that to the column to the right says, well, what does the industry want? Because at the end of the day, that's who's hiring. The FAA is not hiring, it's the industry. Well, they want the 107 because you have to have it. But they want the rest of the things beneath that. They want instructed, hands-on, demonstrated, documented flight training. They want to know that this person has safety best practices, understanding and competency, that they know how to fly all kinds of different drones, because there's fixed wings, there's rotary wings, there's multi-wings, there's all kinds of different drones out there. And companies today are employing all kinds of different drones because they're built for different missions. They want them to have visual and beyond visual line of sight experience, and experience in both primary and what we refer to as complex operations. So we know that because we're working with those companies. We're helping them set up their operations. And so that's why, when you look at USI and who we are and what we do in the industry, we work backwards from developing a program that is consistent with what industry is looking for. So now let's start talking about that. So, okay, as we start moving into the training and education and, how do we do this? First off, we put our programs in really two categories: primary operations, which is consistent with where FAA Part 107 regulations are today, because they are small aircraft, visual line of sight, non-complex operations, and they probably make up 80 to 85% of all commercial drone operations in the United States today are primary. So you want to make sure that you're training for that. But very quickly, we are moving in what we're referring to as advanced operations, bigger aircraft, the key thing being beyond visual line of sight. So now you're operating that drone remotely, but you can't see the drone anymore. So you're now reliant on other input variables, to be able to manage and fly that aircraft. So we're heading in that direction, but that's not going to be the focus of today, because just so you know, from a timing standpoint, the FAA is scheduled to drop what they refer to as the notice for proposed rulemaking for what right now is being called Part 108, which is beyond visual line of sight operations. The proposal for that is going to be dropped by the FAA in 2024. So we're looking at 2025 being the year where beyond visual line of sight operations becomes quote unquote normal operations. And that, folks, is when what I refer to as the mushroom cloud, the exponential growth within the drone industry is going to occur. And that is on top of what already is considered to be very aggressive growth. This is how USI created our certification structure. So I'm going to focus on the ones on the left there under the primary certifications. And so the top badge, and I know this is a little tough to see, I apologize for that. The top badge to the underneath designation says educator. And there's nothing wrong with that. An educator is an instructor. It could be a commercial or an academic instructor that has earned the certifications required to be able to teach the knowledge-based certification curriculum. So not the flight side, but the knowledge-based side. The next certification down or designation is called the crew member. Well, so that the crew member picks up the knowledge-based stuff that the person above them has, but they also pick up what's known as ground school. So not only do they have all the kind of the background knowledge, but now they have the flight ground school. They know how to file a flight plan. They know how to do a risk mitigation. They know, they know how, but they're not trained on the flight side, but they can operate as a visual crew member. So a non-flying crew member. Then the next one becomes the operator. That's where basically you combine the knowledge-based, which are the first two badges, with the flight-based, the second two badges. And now that person, the operator, can now operate at industry best practices within primary operations. And then the last one is for the folks on this call, that's the instructor. That's where you learn everything the operator does, but you take a module above that, which is designed specifically for how do I now instruct this? How do I teach this? That's called the UCI, which is the USI Certified Instructor Badge. So that is how our certification structure is set up. The advanced mirrors the primary. It's just different material. It's based on the complex operations as opposed to the non-complex operations. So here's another way of looking at this, though, because I want to stress this, that not everybody in the program, both instructor and student, is going to end up flying. Maybe that's not everybody's goal and objective here. So on this slide, what you see is these first three badges are the knowledge-based: systems architecture, aeronautics, and flight planning. That's all knowledge. And if you accumulate those three badges, you can then come out of that and you say, oh, well, I want to fly. So the upper badge, level 4, is a flight operation badge. And many will do that. But if you don't want to do that, you can go down to the level 5 badge, which is a maintenance and repair. Imagine with 350,000 commercial registered drones, and that's probably growing at 30 to 50,000 per year until 108 comes out, and then it's going to start growing at hundreds of thousands of aircraft being registered again. My point being is that the maintenance technician, the service and support side of the drone industry, is going to grow right alongside the flight side because the two work hand in hand. One can't exist without the other. So there's a maintenance technician path and there's a flight operations path that your students can take, and they can take both, which is awesome. So within our great state of Ohio, we've worked very hard, but we've had just incredible help and cooperation from everybody that I've reached out to in Ohio, starting with the Department of Education, which you'll see this letter was dated 2021, where they said, hey, good news. We are recognizing basically 3 of the 4 primary certification badges are recognized by the state of Ohio Department of Education for 6 points each. However, this is a little misleading because the one badge, the one certification that they don't recognize of USI's is our Part 107 preparation. And the Department of Education does recognize the Part 107 certification as a 6-point certification. So in essence, all 4 of our programs will result in a recognized certification, 3 of them being USI's, 1 being the FAA's, that are worth 6 points. And the reason I say that is that the FAA does not offer curriculum or a program that you can put in the school and do that. So anyway, so that's great news from the DOE. We also have recognition from TechCred, which is the Ohio's Workforce Development Program that's managed out of the Lieutenant Governor's office, and they recognize our 3 of the 4 primary certifications as well, which is great news because teachers and schools can use the TechCred program to fund the training and instruction that the teachers are getting to become qualified to teach this course. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a second. And the other thing, and this is really outside of my comfort zone and my knowledge base, but so Ohio has these CTAG, ITAG, programs, which I'm sure everybody on this call knows 10 times more about than I do. But our safety level 1 badge is a recognized ITAG by Transfer Credit of Ohio for 3 college credits. So again, just wonderful support from the state of Ohio in terms of putting their money where their mouth is, saying, hey, we want to be a leader in all this stuff. And the last thing I'd leave you with, relative to kind of just on the certifications, is that you always want certifications to be recognized. They got to be meaningful. Who recognizes these things? And so, as I mentioned before, the result of our certifications would be FAA recognition through the Part 107, examination. NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, they're very, very, very involved in kind of the public safety, public services side of the industry. And NIST is a major player in terms of of recognition of drone standards, and they recognize it. ASTM, International Standard for Training Remote Pilot and Command of Uncrewed Aircraft Systems, they have the program. We have self-certified our program to ASTM standards. And then lastly on this page is USAIG. USAIG is what's known as an insurance underwriter. They're the largest aviation insurance underwriter in the world. They are also a Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett company. And we, USI, little old USI, we are their safety partner in the drone space. So every dollar that a customer spends with USAIG on their drone policy translates into points that they can spend with USI on any of our different products and services that are designed to enhance safety. So that it just kind of rounds out why they are relevant and significant. I will also want to give kudos here to our great state for these announcements, which were just made in September. So just a few months ago, the state of Ohio announced three. Well, there's actually three things that I've got on this page. The first is the lower left there. That aircraft that we're looking at there is known as a Joby, Joby. Joby is one of the first and is the best funded. This was Google, this was Uber, this was oh gosh, there's all kinds of I don't I want to say Microsoft, don't quote me on that. Are huge companies that have put huge money into the investment of this electric vertical takeoff. This is an eVTOL, electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. So this one here is a six propeller, it has six propellers on it. It's battery powered. It lands and takes off electrically, and then the blades rotate and it flies like an airplane at speeds approaching 200 miles an hour. So you can imagine the use case of something like this. And those aircraft are going to be launched initially as piloted. There will be a pilot in there, and their business plan requires over the course of time, that time is probably 5, 7, 10 years, that pilot, that in fact the pilot's seat comes out of the aircraft, and those aircraft become fully autonomous, aka a drone. Ohio announced in September that the manufacturing of the Joby aircraft is going to be done at Dayton International Airport here in Ohio. That's a big deal, folks. That's kind of like the aviation equivalent of the Intel plant, coming into Ohio. On that same day, Ohio announced, you see in the upper right there, it says the National Advanced Air Mobility Center of Excellence Industry Forum. So we've got this, we've got this aircraft that is going to be built in Ohio. We've got this National Advanced Air Mobility Center of Excellence, which really is the group behind the eVTOLs, the advanced, that's called advanced air mobility. And then also in Springfield, Ohio, we have the UAS Center of Excellence, which is basically Ohio's way. They built this beautiful $10 million building that, and basically they open it up to the industry and say, hey, bring your company here, bring your business here, hire our people. And so Ohio is doing a wonderful, wonderful job of putting its money where its mouth is. And I'll tell you what, I want to do my job. I want to do my part as a very, long time proud Ohioan of making Ohio the epicenter for this next generation of aerospace technology. And we've just got a lot of great things going on. So the work that you're doing in school is absolutely translating into opportunities for your kids once they graduate.
Hey, Scott, we only have
Yes.
about 5 minutes left, so I just
Oh,
wanted to
gosh.
let you know that.
Okay.
It's so much great information. But people will have to go to a 2:00 session too. So if you
Yep.
want to hit the most important things here, and if you could also talk about ages, like as you talk about the kids, like what are the ages that students can start taking these courses?
Well, we recommend in STEM applications, we recommend drones starting to come into the classroom in middle school. That 6th, 7th grade is great. Our program is primarily a 10th, 11th, 12th grade program, and collegiate. But we are in all kinds of high schools, 10th, 11th, 12th grade primarily, and dedicated CTE programs. And one of and I'm sorry that I'm running out of time. So I jumped ahead to this slide because we are offering right now. We are offering a program. We just opened it up. It's for Ohio teachers. It's a program to basically take Ohio teachers through that USI certification program, ending with the UCI, the USI Certified Instructor Badge. that would be self-paced but USI supported, and it will culminate in a live flight, real drone flight operation at the Ohio State University, taking place. We're going to have a couple of dates that we announced in June at OSU, and there's going to be all kinds of cool stuff that we're going to do when the folks come in for 3 days. But we've just launched this, and here's the great news: is that this program can be 100% funded by TechCred. And if you want to scan that QR code on my screen right now, you can. Again, this presentation is going to be made available afterwards, but we just really want the instructors to, again, this program does not work unless there is a qualified, trained, motivated, instructor at the head of this thing. And so that's where what we want to do is we want to put our money where our mouth is by offering this special program. It's just going to be an incredible program for Ohio teachers. So that really is it. I mean, I've got a couple of those slides, but they don't add a lot of value. What I'd really like to do, Terrell, if you don't mind, is I'd like to open it up now for any questions.
Yeah, that'd be great. I read the one question in the chat was about ages.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions? Please just open your mic or post in the chat.
Well, and that's okay. Again, if anybody has them, let me know. The slide that I'm on right now is just kind of a wrap up slide, but it says, look, if you bring drones in the high school, which is just a wonderful, wonderful place as a starting point, but your students can take what they learn from your program and they can go, boom, right into the marketplace. There are good career opportunities going right out of high school and into the marketplace. They can also go to 2-year schools where they'll probably start going into programs like the advanced programs, or they can go into 4-year, where what you'll do is you'll find them going into the advanced drone programs, but they'll also be spinning off into other programs like, again, the software side, the data side, the engineering side. So they'll be more embedded into that, but just wonderful opportunities for them. So as you can tell, I couldn't be more excited about what this offers, because there is not a ready to go workforce for this drone technology, because it is brand new. And that's why we need the school system, the high schools, the CTEs, the collegiate programs to basically build this huge workforce. Because I've only been talking about pilots. We haven't even talked about, again, the manufacturing, design, the engineering, software, infrastructure, system support, all that kind of stuff. So millions of jobs are what's coming down the pike here that are all at the end of the day tied to this thing we're referring to as drones.
Scott, there's a couple of questions. One is, I think we're talking about the teacher program. That's for the whole state, right? That's not targeted to a specific area.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've been putting out emails in a large database that we have, but that's primarily to school administrators, CTE directors, stuff like that. So maybe it's not getting all the way down to the instructor. So that's why I would encourage you to go, take the link off of this page, but we'll continue to push our marketing message out there as well.
And there's just one more question. Who's the best person to talk with to get a program started? So if someone was interested, a district was interested in looking into this, should they contact you or should they contact someone else in the organization?
Contact me, and we have a great team at USI, and it would either be myself or a gentleman named Nick Langoff, who is our UAS specialist, working with academia. And again, we can take you from a blank piece of paper to putting in a program that is absolutely best in class. And that's what we do. And it's, again, we're here to empower you. We're not here to do it. We're here to empower you to do it.
Well, thank you so much, Nick. I'm going to drop your email address into the chat box right now for that person. It's also on the webpage. There's a email link to Scott's email, and you can also contact myself at Region 9, Terrell Schwake, or your CTE consultant at your SST, and we'd be glad to help make those connections for you. Scott, thank you so very much. We are all excited. I know I'm going to be in contact with you again. I want you to come to my region and talk about this, and I'm sure my colleagues are excited about it too. So
I love getting out. Get me out of the office. I'm in Galena. I'm in Columbus. So get me out.
Perfect.
That'd be awesome.
We
Yeah,
will do that. Thank you again for your time and especially for doing 2 presentations for us today.
you're very, very welcome. Happy New Year, everybody. Have a great 24.
Thank you. And so everyone that's here, you can, the links to do your evaluation and or certificate are in the chat box and get you off to your 2 o'clock or your 3 o'clock session. There's one more session today. So thanks for spending your time with us. Have a great
Bye,
rest of your
everybody.
day. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Well done, my friend. I feel like it's the Jetsons, like things will be flying across.
I know I can't even, I know when I talked to him, we talked for a long time and I was just like, yeah, I like what Lisa put in there. I mean, we should be telling kids this in elementary school. And I love how he had the 2 slides. Show these to parents. I loved how he said that. Show these
Yeah.
2 slides. He gets it. He gets
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Just think about all the jobs. I mean,
We,
we've heard today, we're not preparing kids for these jobs. What are we
well,
doing?
Carol, that's what Chris and I just said, so much of what we talked about. I mean, these 2 sessions, the last 2 about transportation, like everything that we have gets to us somehow through transportation.
Mhm. I know. And I don't know if you guys heard, I put in the chat when he mentioned it, but Cleveland Clinic announced, I don't know, 3
Yeah.
or 4 weeks ago on the news, they're going to start that medication program. And I'm thinking, I go, oh, the dealers are going to be so happy. They're going to be running around. All these
Yeah.
kids.
Pennies from heaven.
I know. They're going to be shooting the drones out of the sky.
Yeah.
What's in that pillbox?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I know. I thought, oh my
All
gosh.
right.
I saw on Shark Tank once these guy made, like the lockbox you put on your porch that Amazon can deliver to or whatever. I thought that's a genius business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. All righty, Terrell, thanks.
Thank you guys. I'll
Later.
see you at 4 for the debrief.
3, is it 3 to 4 or 4
I
to
think
5?
4 to
5.
4:30 is a debrief.
All right. Oh, that's right, because we go, 3 to 4.
Okay.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya. I said no to the debrief,
Yeah,
but
I'll jump on.
yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of like our thing.
right, yeah. Let me, I'll get